Hi everybody, welcome to the Kentucky Derby edition of Out of the Gate, presented by Xpressbet. I'm Dan Illman. Thanks so much for watching. Here's what's on tap this Saturday on Out of the Gate. It's the Kentucky Derby, the first Saturday in May, the first jewel in racing's Triple Crown. Matt Bernier, Mike Beer, and myself, we're going to handicap the race. And on Out of the Gate, we're going to attack this year's Kentucky Derby from all angles, not only with in-studio handicapping analysis, but Craig Milkowski from Timeform US, he'll talk about the Derby as well as the Grade 2 Churchill Downs Stakes. Nicole Russo will give all of her pedigree analysis for the 20 entrants in the Kentucky Derby, and Kinchin's Corner will discuss the Churchill Downs Daily Double. But wait, there's more. Lots of graded stakes races at Churchill Downs on Saturday on the undercard, headed by the Grade 1 Humana Distaff and the Grade 1 Woodford Reserve Turf Classic. We're getting ready to break out of the gate with our analysis of the Kentucky Derby. We begin our Saturday out of the gate with the DRF.com Formulator Race of the Day. Let's take a look at the field for the Grade 1 Kentucky Derby at 1.25 miles for 3-year-olds. Matt Bernier, Mike Beer here, our in-studio handicappers, will take you through the Grade 1 Kentucky Derby, and our Kentucky Derby Stakes preview is presented by Xpressbet. Remember to head on over to the Race of the Day event page on DRF.com and download those free Formulator past performances and handicap along with us. Gents, the number 14 Classic Empire, last year's 2-year-old champion, the 4-1 morning line favorite for the Kentucky Derby. McCracken at 5-1, Always Dreaming, Irish War Cry, not far behind. Let's take a look at Classic Empire's most recent race. Matt, it was a very important race. He needed a big effort in the Arkansas Derby, and he came through. He needed to prove that he could still run, because his only other start as a 3-year-old was an unmitigated disaster. He did come through in this spot, particularly maybe if you want to make the argument he was between horses, not all that comfortable. You see him coming here on the outside. He's going to run down Conquest Mo Money. Don't like that he pops back to his left lead, but it was nice to see him get back to the winner's circle. It's been a roller coaster season for Classic Empire. He bombed in his seasonal debut, Mike. He then didn't want to train. He had foot problems. We all know about his behavioral issues. How much stock do you put into that when handicapping a horse like Classic Empire? Do you worry, is he going to behave? Is he not going to behave? Or are you saying, I'm just handicapping off the dope?
I think you have to worry about it a little bit, because it's not like this is just something that, you know, popped up as a new 3-year-old. I mean, this is a horse who, going back to his hopeful as a 2-year-old, where he just decided he was going to make a left turn out of the gate and leave his rider sitting on the ground. So he's always been, you know, one of those headstrong kind of horses. On the other hand, you know, I would be a little concerned about it, but if you're really concerned about the big crowd in the Derby and whether this horse is going to keep himself together, you know, he did win a Breeders' Cup race in front of a huge crowd in Santa Anita, so he can do it. He's a talented horse, one of the more talented 3-year-olds in the country. I don't want him at a short price, but obviously he's a horse that could win this race. Matt, of the other horses coming out of the Arkansas Derby, let's talk about Looking at Lee, a horse that's a true one-run closer that may not be too compromised by this tough inside post.
You know he's got one way to go, and that's right to the back. They're going to drop out Corey Lanery. I don't think the one post is going to be any sort of an issue, even though they break directly in line with the inside rail. You're going to take him back. You're going to hope the pace heats up front. He's going to be running on late. The question is, how many pieces can he pick up? Is it going to be enough to hit the board?
Mike untrapped a couple of bid hung lines in his last 2 races. Blinkers off for Steve Asmussen. Do you think this distance is a little bit too far?
I think it is, and I think the competition probably a little too tough for him as well. I mean, I think he's a pretty good horse, but they've run him in 4 of the Derby prep races now this year, and he did his best in all of them, and he had his chance in all of them, and at the end of the day, he just wasn't good enough.
Sonneteer, another late runner. Matt's still a maiden. He's got a lot of work to do, but he's in really good hands with Keith DeZormo.
Certainly is, but I feel like he fits everything I just said about Looking at Lee. You know what they're going to do. They're going to take him back, try and make one run. If the pace heats up, he's going to be coming on at the end. If it doesn't, question is how many horses can he clunk past?
Second choice on the morning line is McCracken. McCracken comes out of the Bluegrass Stakes won by IRAP. We're going to turn into the stretch right now of the Bluegrass. IRAP, as a maiden, is on the lead. He doesn't change leads in the stretch. He still keeps going. Mike, is this an indictment on this field that IRAP is still able to wire them? Or were you willing to say McCracken's just prepping, he'll be way sharper for the Derby?
Yeah, a little bit of both, I think. Certainly in McCracken's case, I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. I mean, but, you know, this entire stretch when it looked like IRAP was going to get beat, especially with Practical Joke just bearing down on him the entire way, I just kept thinking, well, Practical Joke's going to get him. Oh, he's going to get him now. Oh, now he's going to... and he never got by him. Good for IRAP for winning it. We'll see if he can back that race. So McCracken was the only horse I really wanted to give the benefit of the doubt out of the Bluegrass. I think they were prepping him in there.
Matt, were you disappointed with McCracken's race? Because remember, he was going to run in the Tampa Bay Derby, and he had a little minor physical ailment that sent him very briefly to the sidelines, and then he resurfaced in the Bluegrass, and it did kind of look like a prep. But did you want to see a little more running late?
No, I have to be honest with you. When you go and watch the entirety of the replay, I think there was a lot of things going on from McCracken. He was a little bit keen early on, and I think that had to do with him being fresh. He hadn't raced since February, and going into the far turn, Joel Rosario was riding Practical Joke. I think he intentionally moved up, not just because it was time to get going in the race, but to kind of hem McCracken in a little bit mid-pack. He did come on with a little bit of a run, McCracken, and he flattened out down the lane. I happen to think it was a perfect prep for a race like this. The question is now, do you think he's good enough?
Mike, for IRAP, the winner of that race, was it simply a situation, all the stars aligned, no speed in the race? He took over a clear lead in the stretch against several horses that were prepping over a track that was kind to speed. Or do you think, listen, this is a very well-bred horse. He's a half despite style by Tiz now. His connections have won the Derby 2 out of the past 5 years. Right. Is he finally putting it all together?
I don't, listen, I don't want to take too much away from this horse. I do think he caught a lot of breaks in that Bluegrass to finally get it done, but I don't want to take too much away from him, only because he's been a pretty good horse right from day one, and he's just going to be a huge price again on Saturday. So if you like him and you're a believer in the Bluegrass, I think you should probably go ahead and bet him.
Matt trainer Chad Brown toyed with the idea of adding blinkers to Practical Joke following that runner-up effort in the Bluegrass. Ultimately, Chad decided no blinkers. He loomed boldly in the stretch, and then he just came up a little bit short. Personally, I was disappointed that he didn't run down IRAP late, and it kind of vindicates all the handicappers that have said, 1 1/8 is too far, let alone 1 1/4.
I've just been saying that all along. I don't think this horse wants to go this far. He's supremely talented. You can make the case he's one of the most talented 3-year-olds that we have. I just don't think distance is going to be his friend. And I guess if anyone lost in the post position draw, you can talk about Thundersnow, who we'll talk about in a little bit with a 2-post. Practical Joke, if you're in the camp that I am and you don't believe that distance is his friend, post 19 going into the first turn, coming from off the pace, I think he can't help but be hung out to dry.
Matt, J. Boy's Echo put up a big Beyer speed figure in winning the Gotham. But after that race, some handicappers looked at the race cockeyed and said he had a beautiful trip sitting behind a fast and contested pace. In the Bluegrass, the pace wasn't fast, and J. Boy's Echo, he didn't run very well. Is he a pace-dependent runner?
I don't know that he's pace-dependent. It certainly helps. Any of these horses that are going to come from sort of mid to rear, they're going to need some pace to run at. The Bluegrass, Keeneland that day, the main track was a little bit wonky. I think Speed did very well. He was coming from off of it. I'm still going to be a little bit more kind to McCracken. I don't want to completely draw a line through J. Boy's Echo, but I don't really view him as a win candidate.
Mike, what kind of horse is J. Boy's Echo?
I don't know. I think he's pretty good. I was disappointed in his Bluegrass. I think like a lot of people, I actually thought he was one of the horses who would run really well in that race, and then he didn't. It concerns me a little bit. On the other hand, you're talking about, in a race that, from my perspective, he doesn't have that many compelling long shots in it. He's maybe one of the more compelling ones, if only because, when you're playing long shots, you're looking for one reason to like him. This horse has one very big reason. He's got one very fast race.
Man, I was disappointed with Tapwrit's non-effort in the Bluegrass. He just didn't show up at all. Yes, he was a little bit wide, didn't break very well, but I really expected a strong performance after he won a McCracken-less Tampa Bay Derby. Can he rebound for Todd?
Well, this is the question that you've got to ask yourself, or anyone that likes Tapwrit. This is a horse that, okay, the Bluegrass was a disaster, but his 2 runs at Tampa, I like both of them. The question becomes, can you forgive an effort that was so bad as your final tune-up for the biggest race of your life? I'm in the camp that says, no, I can't forgive that, but I can completely understand why somebody wants to say, you know what? Everybody deserves a mulligan, give him the benefit of the doubt, and the distance should actually help him.
Pletcher has Tapwrit. He's got Always Dreaming, a prime contender off this performance in the Florida Derby. And while Always Dreaming is relatively lightly raced, he has now won a couple of 9-furlong races. So, Mike, he might have the bottom to really appreciate this 1 1/4. And he figures to be forwardly placed, maybe sitting off a really nice target and fast and accurate.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what kind of trip he can get, because drawn sort of post 5 in the middle of all the speeds for a horse who wants to be forward. Maybe it'll work out well for him, and he'll fall into a trip, and maybe it won't. We'll see what happens with him. You know, to me, Dan, I don't know if I really want to bet this horse in the Kentucky Derby as one of the favorites. On the other hand, I'm not so sure that he isn't one of the best 3-year-olds in the country. I mean, I like all of his races. I do like that he has 2 9-furlong wins. I think there's a chance that, listen, if anybody just turns this Kentucky Derby into a runaway, it's probably him. I'm not going to bet him. I am going to use him in the pick 4, though.
Matt, I think you agree that this horse has a tremendous amount of potential, and you said off air before we came on, if any horse is going to put on a show in this race, it might be him.
I think he's the only one. If somebody wins by 5-6 lengths, I think he's the only one that's going to be capable of doing that. The question for me, and I've kind of just talked myself into this train of thought, I wonder if he fired a shot there in that race we just saw in the Florida Derby where he looked so impressive. It was his first time facing much better horses. He's going to face a pace Saturday afternoon that he's never seen in his life. I want to know how he's going to react to that, and we all know Pletcher, it's not that he can't win at Churchill, he can't win anywhere else, but he's so much better at Gulfstream than he is in other jurisdictions. I won't be surprised if he wins, but I won't be leaning on him.
Mike, it can be argued that Gunnevera is the best closer in this race, and we project this race to have a fast pace up front. Gunnevera, just throw out the last race. It was impossible the minute the post positions were drawn and the way he was ridden.
True enough. I'm not totally convinced Gunnevera is good enough to win the Derby, but he is a multiple graded stakes winning 2-year-old. He is a graded stakes winning 3-year-old, and he is one of the few horses in this race anyway who's coming out of, I think, a most recent prep race that's actually a better effort than it appears to be. I mean, he had no chance from that post position and the way he was ridden last time.
Unlike several of the horses in this race, Matt's State of Honor, he's got a lot of foundation. Is there any improvement left, or have we seen his best race?
I still think you could see some sort of forward move. I just don't know that Saturday is where it's going to happen, mainly because I don't think he wants any part of this distance. I think he would be greatly benefited by turning back. I wonder if they try it here, it doesn't work, maybe a race like the Woody Stevens comes into play.
Let's go to Aqueduct for the Wood Memorial, the important prep race for the Naira circuit. Irish Warcry Mike did not beat a very strong field, and this track played to his strengths because it really favored horses that were up close to the pace. That being said, visually it was very impressive, and it came back fast on the Beyer scale.
He's got 2 fast figures now, and that's a feather in this horse's cap. Obviously, he won both of those races with big figures where he had all the best of it both times. This was a very speed-favoring track, a field that I just did not care for. I don't like this Wood Memorial as a prep race overall. He's beating a horse there, a Battalion Runner, who Todd Pletcher deemed not nearly good enough to be one of his Derby starters. I don't know. I could go either way on this horse, but as a horse who's going to, be one of the shorter prices in this race, I'm against him.
Matt, let's take a look at the time form S Pace Projector for this year's Kentucky Derby, and they have Irish Warcry out in front. We know he's a versatile horse. He can win from on the lead. He can win from just off of the pace. I'm not sure I want him on the lead in a situation where you see by that red notation the pace will be fast.
I agree. I don't want him on the lead if for some reason he ends up on it. I think he's the only horse that can wire the field. Having said that, I would much rather him sit off of a target like he did in the Wood Memorial. And the other thing we got to talk about with the Pace Projector, I mean, I understand they're taking the data that is available at the point, but as Mike said when we did the sort of reaction to the post position draw, you got to handicap the race a little bit. They've made it clear, fast and accurate, they're going to try to make the front. Whether he's fast enough or not, we'll find out. But I have a sneaky feeling that's not how the race is going to shape up.
Let's head down to the fairgrounds for the Louisiana Derby. The Louisiana Derby and the entire New Orleans road to the Triple Crown was dominated by Gervin, a horse that has nice tactical speed, able to work out good trips. And Mike, he wants to beat you.
Yeah, I like all those things about this horse. I don't love the Louisiana road to the Derby. I don't think these were the strongest prep races. He got a great trip and ride in this race, too, with a really fast pace in front of him. I like him as a horse. I just don't like him in the Derby, and obviously you have all the questions surrounding his current state of fitness.
Lots of issues surrounding his feet after this race, Matt, and we don't like how he changes back to his left lead in the lane, but he's a hardy, solid runner.
Yeah, he is, and I think that's sort of the thing that's going to get lost in the shuffle here. I mean, look, if he runs really big on Saturday, it won't get lost in the shuffle, but if he runs poorly Saturday, the feet problem is sort of taken over from a horse that really has done nothing wrong. All he does is go out. Okay, Louisiana, maybe it wasn't the strongest group, but he goes out and it was good enough to get the job done there. I think he's an honest horse. I think there is talent here, but I fear that he's just going to get kind of lost in the shuffle that, oh, well, you know, he's had foot problem, foot problem, foot problem. He is a talented horse.
Mike, Patch ran really well in the Louisiana Derby, but he's stuck in a tough outside post position. And if you look at his speed figures, he's got a lot of improving to do.
Yeah, exactly. He didn't get a great post in this race, and because he's very, very light. He's the most lightly raced horse in the field. So, you know, let's expect him to sort of start coming forward as time goes on this year. This is a really, really tough spot for Patch.
Wasn't surprising that Gormley won the Santa Anita Derby, as we see here. He's a legitimate Grade 1 horse. He now has 2 Grade 1 victories at the Great Race Place. Matt, but what was most surprising was this race came back so slow and just looked like a stagger fest in the stretch.
I mean, just look right now. It's painful to watch the stretch run. It's kind of just crying out for someone to take this thing because they're all ready to fall down. Gormley, I think his class gets him through in this spot. I've always liked this horse. I have to be honest. I don't particularly love the way he's trending. This is 3 consecutive buyers where he has declined, not ascended. To me, that's a bit of a problem. Look, he's won 2 Grade 1s. I think there's only one other horse in the field that can say that. I'm going to be a little bit surprised if he does win Saturday.
Mike Battle, a midway up and on the pace throughout in the Santa Anita Derby. Do you give him some extra points? I mean, Royal Mo was up and on the pace as well, and he was still hanging around at the finish.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I mean, I don't love that as the Santa Anita Derby as a prep overall. I don't love it. If you told me I just had to take one of those horses out of it, I'll take Gormley. I just think he's a better horse right now. I have no problem with the other horse who was setting the pace in there. I think he's fine, and eventually may turn out to be pretty good. I don't want him in the Derby.
The great unknown in this race is Thundersnow, making his North American debut. We're going to see him win the UAE Derby last time out. Despite getting a little bit goofy in the stretch, he's chasing a very nice Japanese horse in Epicaris, who controlled the pace up front. Thundersnow's going to change leads, and then he's going to start wandering around, Matt.
Yeah, and I think it was what everyone has sort of alluded to, that maybe he just caught the infield sort of big scoreboard thing they've got going. You see him drifting out now, being a little bit of a goofball, but he digs right back in and he comes and gets Epicaris. And I think everyone here is in agreement that if Epicaris were here, he would have a big chance in this Derby. If that's the case, by default, you've got to look at Thundersnow and say he's got a big chance. And even you listen to the connections, Saeed bin Sarur, they said that this is unlike any of the other horses they've brought over from Dubai. He just seems to fit sort of the dirt mold, even though he's probably better on turf. Seems to be plenty capable on the dirt.
Very classy, very capable on the dirt. Group 1 winner on turf. Mike, he's going to be facing a pace that could be much faster than anything he's ever seen. Yeah,
I think he's a really talented horse, but there's so much working against him in this Derby. Not only that whole, UAE Derby shipping over from Dubai kind of thing that hasn't really worked out for these connections, but he's got a terrible post position down on the inside, and he's going to face a big pace in this race. There's a lot working against him, but I think he's a good horse.
Mike Hentz won the Sunland Derby last time out. He won his maiden, one of the most remarkable performances you're ever going to see. And the Sunland Derby has come back as a surprisingly live race. Do you give this horse an outside chance at a price? He had a 97 buyer staring you in the face.
Sure, he's got an outside chance. Absolutely, he does. I don't love the Sunland Derby's race. I understand that it's sort of played out pretty strong with the horses that have come back to run out of it, but I think it's at least worth pointing out that the horses that came back out of that race and ran really well were the horses who were right up close to a really fast pace. This horse was not right up close to a really fast pace. He was way out of it, and he made a run. That might play well on Saturday as well. He's a pretty good horse. I don't like him that much on Saturday, though.
Matt, the connections of Fast and Accurate say, Timeform US Pace Projector, don't worry about it. We're going to the front.
Hey, look, you look at the Timeform US Pace figures that this horse ran in the spiral. They're off the charts. He was forwardly placed, but keep in mind that was a day at Turfway where you needed to be forwardly placed if you were going to be victorious. I think he's a nice horse. I think he's in over his head here, and I think he's going to probably eventually go back to the turf of the synth.
Pick time for the Grade 1 Kentucky Derby. Matt, where are you going?
Going with Irish War Cry. The 17 post doesn't bother me at all. I'm hopeful that we can work out some sort of a trip similar to what he got in the Wood Memorial. Let the other speeds go, park out in sort of the 4-5 path going into the first turn. I'm not comparing him to him, but kind of work out the American Pharoah trip where you sit off the speeds, you try to take this thing over, turning for home. I think the other thing just to keep in the back of your mind, like Mike said, he's got 2 triple-digit buyers on his page. That's more than really anybody else in this field can say. Highest last out buyer in the field, one of the better Timeform US ratings. He's got a little bit of tactical speed. Give me Irish War Cry.
Mike Trainer, Ian Wilkes learned from a master, and Carl Nafsker on how to prep a horse. You're going with McCracken.
Yeah, I'm hoping that's exactly what the deal was with that Bluegrass last time too. I'm still not totally convinced that McCracken is every bit good enough to win a race like the Kentucky Derby. I think he's going to have to really improve and run the very best race he's ever run. On the other hand, every time I go back and look at that Bluegrass, I feel like they used that race as a means to win. I don't think you see that much anymore. These guys are trying to win the prep races. I don't really think Ian Wilkes and the Connections were really trying to win the Bluegrass. I think they were trying to win this race on Saturday, and I'm hoping it works out for them.
I'm going to agree with Matt in here. I'm going to go with Irish War Cry. I love his tactical speed. He can go to the lead. He can sit from off the pace. He was visually impressive in the Wood Memorial last time out, and is one of only a handful of horses in this race that's truly run a very fast race. I'm hoping Irish War Cry works out a good trip. It'd be nice to see Rajiv Mirage, who's had so many physical problems, get into the winner's circle in a big race like the Kentucky Derby. I went 17, 2, 5, and 8. Craig Milkowski, Timeform US. I know he's been looking at the Kentucky Derby. He's also been looking at a very interesting sprint race on the undercard, the Grade 2 Churchill Downs Stakes. Let's go to that segment right now.
Hi, I'm Craig Milkowski from Timeform US for Out of the Gate. Today I'm going to talk about the Grade 2 Churchill Downs Stakes. It's on Derby Day, the 10th race, and it's a 7-furlong race run on the dirt. The morning line favorite is Masochistic, who finished second in the Breeders' Cup Sprint last year, though he was later DQ'd for a substance violation. He's a morning line favorite, and I'm going to try to beat him. First, we're going to look at the Timeform US Pace Projector, and it doesn't show any flags where we favor early horses or we think the pace is going to be fast, but it does show that the favorite Masochistic is not going to get an easy lead in this race. He looks like he's going to be challenged early. Let's take a look at Masochistic's PPs. The first thing you'll notice is I've circled his pace figures in there, and two of his last 3 races show them in blue, which means he's been setting slow paces. And we think he's going to have to deal with a little bit quicker than that here. Usually when he doesn't get the lead or he is challenged early and has to run fast, he hasn't been able to win in the past. The horse who looks like he's going to be able to do the most damage for him is Bluegrass Singer. This is a horse that just wants to lead. He's a dyed-in-the-wool front runner. He wants to get out there and go as fast as he can, as far as he can. Last time at Gulfstream in a listed stakes race, he got caught 3 wide in a big speed duel. You can see that with the pace figure circled in red there last time, 164, which is almost off the charts for a sprint race. 146 to the half, and he actually still hung in a little bit to only be beaten 5 lengths. So, I mean, this is a quality speed horse. This isn't cheap. Masochistic's going to have to deal with him early and still have something left late. The next horse I want to talk about is Denman's Call. He's a horse. He came from a long layoff. He was off, I think, 3/4 of a year. You can see at the bottom of the figure listed, the red line shows he was off 252 days. And he kind of came back and he ran okay the first 2 times. And then the third time he really exploded. His speed figure went from a 110 to a 124. And even more importantly, he did it tracking that slow pace Masochistic set last time and was still able to run him down. He got a nice ride that day from Tyler Bays. He squeezed through on the rail. But even without that, I think he was probably the best horse that day, being able to overcome those slow fractions and still get up from 2.5 lengths behind early. The horse I like most in here, though, is Awesome Slew. As we look at his PPs, we'll see he's a horse who has just been riddled with races running slow-paced, slow fractions. You see a whole lot of blue there. The fractions I'm showing are actually for the leader of the race. They're not for Awesome Slew, so it gives a little bit better picture of the flow of the race. And despite that, since he switched barns back in February at Gulfstream, he's a horse that's really run well. He ran a good second in the Gulfstream Park handicap at a mile, which is around 1 turn there. He was beaten 4.5 lengths 1 second, but he lost to Sharp Azteca, who's just in really good form. He went over to Dubai and he ran second in the Godolphin Mile. Despite a pretty nightmare trip, he was probably the best horse that day. So losing to him was no disgrace. And then he came back and he beat AP Indian and Limousine Liberal, who's on this field, some real quality sprinters. And he did it when the half mile was, again, pretty slow, and he was really wide, and he was still able to blow the doors off of him late. And he won easy. He just ran right by him in the stretch. The other thing to notice with him is they tried to stretch him out several times, and he just looks like a horse who wants 1 turn and especially sprinting. If you look at his career record, you can see on dry track sprints, he's 3 for 4, and the one time he tried 7 furlongs, he was able to win. He's the horse I'm going to bet in here on the win if I can get the morning line or better. And I'm going to key him in exactas with the other 2 horses that I mentioned, Denman's Call and Bluegrass Singer, hoping to get the favorite out of there. That's it for me for today. Good luck on Saturday on all the big races, and more after a brief message.
In the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat, either way, you win. Have a stake in the race with Xpressbet.
Looks like you came in second. Those bets you made this afternoon were all backed by TVG's Money Back Special. Your horse may not have won, but Eddie, we got your back.
Mike Smith.
Well, gotta run. Sorry about the mess.
Sign up now and get a $100 bonus. Plus, all players get money back if their Derby horse finishes second or third. TVG, your best bet.
How do you get out of here?
DRF Plus now has more subscription options. Get news and analysis only or add buyers, closer looks, picks, and DRF Daily Game Plan. DRF TV viewers get 50% off. Use code DRFTV50 at checkout. Learn more about DRF Plus at drf.com/plus. Welcome back to Out of the Gate. The first graded stakes race on the Churchill Downs card on Kentucky Derby Saturday is race number 6. Let's take a peek at the field for the Grade 1 Humana Distaff. We're going 7 furlongs for fillies and mares, a field of 7. The number 5 Finest City was entered in the La Troyenne on Friday. She will compete Saturday in the Grade 1 Humana Distaff, and she will be the favorite. The number 7 Carina Mia, 2-1 for Julien Leperoux and Bill Mott, the second choice. We bring in Matt Bernier for the analysis of the Humana Distaff, and our Humana Distaff Stakes preview is brought to you by William Hill. Matt, the story of this race is Finest City, the reigning Breeders' Cup filly and mare sprint winner, and her most recent start, we're going to take a look at it right now in the Santa Margarita. They stretched her all the way out to 1 1/8 miles, and she ran very well against a hot horse.
She was far from disgraced. Like you say, Vale Dory's down on the inside. Keep in mind, again, 9 furlongs, not really what Finest City wants to do. She's one of the most versatile horses, though, that we have in the United States. She can run on dirt, turf, sprint route, doesn't matter. They had a cross entered in the La Troyenne. They're going to bypass that and run here in the Humana Distaff. She's the horse to beat in either race. I do think the Humana Distaff is a little bit of a more difficult spot, though.
There are some really classy fillies and mares in this race, but ultimately pace might make the race. Q, the Timeform U.S. Pace Projector for this year's Humana Distaff. And not surprisingly, we have the number 5 Finest City very close to the pace, a pace that could favor horses on or near the early lead. So an advantage there for Finest City, maybe an advantage for a longer priced horse. Let's talk about the number 1 Superhumour. Timeform US has Superhumour on the lead, but boy, talk about a hike in class.
Yeah, I have to be honest. This is just a horse you look at it, no matter what metric you're using, whether you're using buyers, Timeform US, whatever the case may be, this horse just is not fast enough. I understand you're going to be forward, but total pass for me. We have a couple of horses coming out of the Grade 1 Madison Stakes at Keeneland at this 7 furlong distance, including the winner, the number 2 Paula's Silver Lining. Let's take a look at Paula's Silver Lining's very game performance. This is her first start of the year, her first start for trainer Chad Brown, and she gutted it out. Very, very gutsy. You've got Constellation on the front for Jerry Hollendorfer. She's already a Grade 1 winner in her own right. On the outside, you've got Minds and Magic, another horse that's going to be running the Humana Distaff. All things considered, thought she ran fine, but you're going to want to pay attention to Paula's Silver Lining. She's there in the Juddmonte Silks, digs in very gamely. Thought it was a good effort, first start off of the bench. The one thing to keep in mind, she usually fires her best shot fresh off the bench. Second off, she can take a little bit of a step back. I don't think she can afford to do that if she's going to win Saturday. She has a very versatile running style, and Timeform US had her 3rd on the pace projector. That means probably a very comfortable spot up close to a moderate pace. She was beaten 2 lengths by Finest City in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint. What does she need to do to turn the tables? I don't think you want to let Finest City go out there and have sort of the jump on you. If you're Jose Ortiz, you have the 2 posts. And if you think the 1 is a little bit cheap on paper, maybe she doesn't have the class that you do, I think you go on with it. Make Finest City come and catch you. You know that Paula's Silver Lining, like you say, she has tactical speed, but in a race like this, I don't think you get cute. I think you send her and say, come and catch me.
Minds and Magic, no match for Paula Silverlining as we saw in the Madison, but she does have one thing going for her. She loves Churchill Downs. 3 for 3 over the track, a true horse for course.
She's a nice filly. I really like her. I think she has a chance to hit the board in here. This is just a really, really difficult spot for her.
The key to this race could very well be whether Bill Mott has the 7, Karina Mia, ready to rumble off of the layoff. She was a very good 3-year-old filly. She won the Acorn. She was 2nd in the Coaching Club American Oaks. She was 3rd against older fillies in the Ballerina. Then she took on the mighty Songbird in the Cotillion. She was found wanting. She disappointed in the filly and mare sprint. Do you think that maybe Songbird took a little of the starch out of her?
It's possible. The Cotillion I don't want to hold against her. 2 turns really not her game. Karina Mia, I think getting back to a sprint is going to be beneficial. It was a complete non-effort in the Breeders' Cup. That's a bit of a concern, and she hasn't started since. It's a very ambitious spot, first off the bench, knowing who you're going to have to face, the finest cities, the Paula Silverlinings of the world. At her best, she can certainly get the job done. The other thing to keep in mind with a horse like Karina Mia, first start as a 4-year-old, very often that 3 to 4 age difference, big gap, and all of a sudden you can take a big step forward. She was already competitive as a 3-year-old. If she moves forward and she's ready to go, she's certainly a player.
My one concern is in that Coaching Club American Oaks, she tried Songbird. It was the first time Songbird was tested in her career. Songbird flicked away Karina Mia. Karina Mia was giving 110%, and since then, she hasn't been the same Karina Mia, beaten favorite in 2 out of her last 3 races. Let's talk about Lightstream. This is a late-running sprinter. You and I have never been big fans because, well, you know, she's not very professional. She hasn't changed leads in the stretch, but on her day, she's pretty fast. Does she get enough pace to set her up?
I don't think she does. Off the bench, Brian Lynch does some very good work, but you brought it up. She's very unprofessional. Maybe all of a sudden she'll change now as a 4-year-old, but she always hangs on that left lead, and she's always going to be a horse that needs a big pace in front of her. I don't think she's going to get it, and even if she does get a big pace, I think this is just the best company she's ever going to face.
Sweetgrass, they've tried her going long, but maybe this is what she is. A late-running 7-furlong, 1-turn mile, maybe a 2-turn mile in a 16th horse. It was nice to see her get back into the winner's circle last time out, but like Minds and Magic, like Lightstream, she might be up against it from a pace standpoint.
She also got a very nice trip at Keeneland most recently. The rail opened up, she shot through, but I like what she did when she finally found daylight. She really finished nicely. She's one I wanted to like her more than I do. I think she's in a little bit tough, but I'm certainly going to use her underneath.
Pick time for the Grade 1 Humana Distaff. Finest City's going to be favored. You're going to Karina Mia, second choice. On the morning line, you're going to go somewhere else.
Paula Silverlining. I want the recency, and I want a horse for Chad Brown. Chad Brown, listen to this for a formulator fact. Past 2 years, dirt winner last out, second off the layoff. 11 for 22, 18 of them hitting the board with a 356 or 365, excuse me, ROI. I just feel like down on the inside, Jose's going to have to get a little bit sort of aggressive. I don't think you want to let Finest City get the jump on you if you're going to get the job done here. But I just think, give me the recency, give me a hard hitter. I think Chad's figuring her out. Give me Paula Silverlining.
I have to use Paula Silverlining in any kind of multiple race wager. You mentioned that formulator fact. Michelle Nevin did a great job with Paula Silverlining, and now Chad hoping to build on that off of the Grade 1 win in the Madison. But I'm going to go with Finest City in here. I just think she's a little bit better than Paula Silverlining. I think that she's going to sit outside. And if Paula Silverlining isn't aggressively ridden and isn't able to get the lead, Finest City will be able to sit outside, keep an eye on Paula Silverlining, and maybe kind of herd her in down towards the inside. I went 5-2 in here. I think Finest City gets back to the winner's circle in the Grade 1 Humana Distaff Stakes. Plenty of stakes action coming up here on Out of the Gate. Move to the turf for race number 7 on the Kentucky Derby undercard. Let's take a look at this field for the Grade 2 Churchill Distaff Turf Mile. Our coverage is presented by TVG. Miss Temple City, Mike Beer, the number 2, is the 9-5 favorite in this race, but Rocco Rojo, the number 6, 3-1 on the line, not far behind at all when they met in the Matriarch.
These are 2 very good turf fillies and turf milers especially. I think they're both really good horses, and they sort of stand out in this field when you start going through it from top to bottom. I mean, you have those 2 sort of at the top, and the rest of this field, they got some finding to do to go with these 2 horses, but they do catch them at the right time as they're both just starting back this year.
Let's watch the Matriarch. Miss Temple City lost in the shuffle a little bit with the Teppins and the Lady Elis of this division the last few years, but all she did was run hard last year against top horses. Here she is getting the jump on Rocco Rojo, who's right outside of her in those teal silks. They both finish up very quickly. Rocco Rojo one stride after the while was in front, but Miss Temple City got her head down just in the nick of time.
Yeah, she did. Miss Temple City sort of had the best of it there, though. I mean, the pace wasn't that fast. She sat close to it, and then she finished gamely to close it down. Roca Rojo, she got a clean sort of in-out run, but she was, you know, a lot further away from that slow pace. I thought she did well to close the gap at the end of the day. These are two really good horses. Miss Temple City, that was her third Grade 1 mile that she won last year, 2 of the others against the boys. She's obviously really good, Dan. She is the horse to beat in this race. She's just, for whatever reason, and I'm not knocking her in any way, shape, or form, I've just never really been that afraid to bet against her when she's a short price.
No, the big two are coming off layoffs. Prize Exhibit also ran in the Matriarch. She was beaten 5 lengths. She was never a match for those horses, but she's had 3 starts this year now. Disappointed a little bit last time out. I'm just not sure what kind of horse she is at this point of her career. She's rock solid, but she's taken on some real toughies in this spot.
Yeah, true enough, and you sort of already have an idea. I think that's the point you were trying to make there. You sort of already have an idea of how good she is. She's run a lot. She is a good horse. I don't think she matches up that well with the 2 favorites in here. I think if you're looking for an alternative, you're probably looking somewhere else.
Recency coming from South Florida. The Honey Fox Stakes. Mississippi Delta finished 2nd. Linda finished 3rd. Let's watch that race right now. Mississippi Delta sat down in behind a tepid pace set by a very fast horse in Celestine.
Yeah.
They're not going to beat Celestine with the trip that Celestine got, but Mississippi Delta, to her credit, is firing. And Linda, in her first start of the year, had to cover a lot of ground in this race. I thought of these two, Linda's the one you're supposed to follow. She did some good things last year.
True enough. Give me Linda out of this race. It was just her first start back. She came with a little bit of a wide run. I thought she flattened out at the end, but that's fine. She was just starting back in that race. She's supposed to take a step forward in this race. I'm not really knocking Mississippi Delta in any way. She got a really nice trip and ride in that race. She did her very best to be 2nd, but I sort of feel like that's the best that she can do, Dan. I also just sort of feel like that race was a mile too. This is a mile. I think she wants to go even shorter than that. Her best races are sprinting on the grass.
Another reason perhaps to like Linda is she's done some good work at Churchill Downs over a wet turf course. Very impressive winner of the Grade 2 Mrs. Revere in her final start at 3 at Churchill Downs over good going. Now, we saw Celestine wire that field. Believe in Birdie's going to try to wire this race, the Churchill Distaff Turf Mile, at least if the Timeform U.S. Pace Projector is correct. And as we take a look at it, Believe in Birdie, who was razor sharp down at the fairgrounds, could be loose yet again. She's been on the lead in her last 4 races, all wins.
Yeah, I have no reason to disagree with this Pace Projector. If you've seen any of Believe in Birdie's races, especially since they finally stopped trying to rate her off the early pace, and that sort of started in the Pebbles last October. They just sent her on a fast pace that day. They've decided that they're not going to try and rate her. They're going to let her go freewheeling on the front end. It's paid off for them. She's won 4 times in a row. Really impressive, winning all 4 of them. I think she will make the front here. Whether she's good enough to hold off the top 2 at the end, I don't know. But I feel like if you want to try and beat the 2 favorites in this race, you're probably supposed to do it with her. I think she will be in front as they turn from home, and I think she's pretty good, actually, Dan.
The horse they have in closest attendance, Timeform U.S. in the Pace Projector to the early leader, Believe in Birdie, is the number 3, Hill House High. We're familiar with her from her days in New York for Chad Brown, but she's gotten really good for Richard Baltus out in Southern California. Let's take a look at her victory in the Royal Heroine Stakes last time out, where she sat up close to the pace, attacked on the turn, and then went on to win by a solid half length. It was a fast race for her, a 96 Beyer speed figure. Harmonize was in this race as well, coming off the bench, and for one reason or another didn't really fire.
Yeah, Harmonize didn't run her best race, so she's better than that, but boy, she's going to have to pick it up pretty quickly in this spot. Listen, Hill House High, I'm not going to take anything away from her. She got a Grade 2 win there. I always had a little thing for her when she was with Chad in New York. It never panned out. Now she's a graded stakes winner. We'll see if she can back that race up.
I thought that was the spot for her, though, last time. Wasn't the strongest Grade 2 in the world, and the pace scenario seemed to work out where she could sit that trip. Now she's going to be chasing a much sharper horse, maybe through fast fractions over, certainly not that rock-hard, firm turf course in Southern California. She's a nice horse, Hill House High. She'll be a good price. I think this is a tougher spot. Let's take a look at our top selections for the Churchill Distaff Turf Mile. Mike, where are you going?
I'm going to give a small chance here to the pace setter, Believe in Birdie, to see if she can pull off the upset. Maybe she catches the 2 top horses at the right time off the layoff. It's not going to be easy for her to wire this field, but I'll take a small shot. I feel like there's no way she could be anything better than 4th choice in this race. Maybe it's the right time to bet her. I'll take a little chance with her. I picked it 4 over 6 over 2.
Rocco Rojo, I think, could be in store for a big season for Chad Brown. I just love the way she flew home last time out in the Matriarch. She seems like a really rock-solid miler. Maybe Hill House High can put a little bit of pressure and Believe in Birdie, and maybe this thing will set up for a mid-pack runner to closer like Rocco Rojo. She does have to deal with a layoff. I'll trust Chad to have this one ready on a big day. 6-2, 1-3 for me in the Churchill Distaff Turf Mile. We're going to take a little bit of a break. When we come back, lots more stakes week's action to preview.
In the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat, either way, you win. Have a stake in the race with Xpressbet.
Looks like you came in second. Those bets you made this afternoon were all backed by TVG's money back special. Your horse may not have won, but Eddie, we got your back.
Mike Smith.
Well, gotta run. Sorry about the mess.
Sign up now and get a $100 bonus. Plus, all players get money back if their Derby horse finishes second or third. TVG, your best bet.
How do you get out of here?
DRF Plus now has more subscription options. Get news and analysis only or add buyers, closer looks, picks, and DRF Daily Game Plan. DRF TV viewers get 50% off. Use code DRFTV50 at checkout. Learn more about DRF Plus at drf.com/plus. Welcome back to the Kentucky Derby edition of Out of the Gate. Let's take a look at the field for our next graded stakes race. It's the Pat Day Mile, race number 8. $250,000 is the purse. It's a one-turn mile race. And Matt Bernier, we've got ourselves a pretty big field in here and several horses that are turning back in distance after contesting Kentucky Derby preps, including the morning line favorite, a tepid favorite to be sure, the number 8, Wild Shot.
I feel like this is always one of the most fun races of the year, where you've got all these horses that maybe the distance really wasn't what they wanted, trying to get into the Kentucky Derby, or maybe quality was a little bit suspect. Now they turn back to a one-turn mile here. And I think it's just, this sets the table for the year going forward, I think, for a lot of these horses. You've got the Woody Stevens only 6 weeks away, and I think the big sort of granddaddy of them all for the sprinters as far as 3-year-olds are concerned, the King's Bishop up at Saratoga. Won't be surprised to see many of these horses pointing for that race.
Wild Shot ran very well last fall at Churchill Downs, went second. I believe it was in the Kentucky Jockey Club against McCracken. But last time out in the Bluegrass, okay, maybe a mile and an eighth was a little bit too far, but I know you liked that horse a little bit in that spot. That was a bad effort.
He was terrible. It's one of those things, particularly on a racetrack that we saw IRAP essentially just go gate to wire, which is kind of what I was hoping Wild Shot was going to be able to do. It was a completely terrible effort. So if you're going to back a horse like this off of a terrible effort, I would strongly suggest not settling for 4-1. I have a hard time believing he's going to be the favorite.
I agree 1,000%. I'm sure he drifts a little bit off that 4-1 price, and maybe the cutback in distance helps, but boy, off that effort, I can't take him at even 6-1 in this race. It's that competitive a field. Let's look at the time form US Pace Projector, because another horse dropping out of one of those Derby preps is a very fast one, and that's the number 4, Uncontested, who was 4th in the Kentucky Jockey Club last year, won the Smarty Jones over a wet track, and that could be key because we expect it to at least be a wet, drying out track at Churchill Downs on Saturday. But he looks like he's going to be part of a very good pace in the Pat Day Mile.
The interesting thing about this horse, if you go through and you watch all of his races down in Arkansas, and even the race that he was victorious in, he gives off the impression that he needs shorter. He wants a mile. They kept trying to go down sort of the Kentucky Derby road and it didn't work. Look, if he gets hooked in some sort of crazy duel, then yeah, it's certainly going to work against him. But I think you brought up a very key point. At the very least, it's going to be a drying out racetrack Saturday afternoon, and that should work to his advantage.
Up close to this fast pace might be the number 11, Sonic Mule. John Velasquez, Todd Pletcher, cooked on a fast pace behind Taprit in the Tampa Bay Derby most recently. Most recent win for this horse, a one-turn mile in the Mucho Macho Man against Kentucky Derby entrant State of Honor. But you and I have never really liked Sonic Mule. We don't think he's that good. His races, other than that swale, aren't very fast.
That's the thing. For me, he's just a little bit slow. And I also think there's something, Todd Pletcher all along had said, we're going to keep him sprinting. We think he's better going short. Well, guess what? They tried to stretch him out and it didn't work. You get back to an elongated sprint. And that's kind of the way I look at these one-turn miles. I don't think they're true routes. I think it's sort of a long sprint. I'm with you. I've never been blown away by him. If he wins on Saturday, I'll probably lose.
The legend Wayne Lucas has the number 13 Warriors Club, another horse turning back in distance. He was second as the favorite last time out in the Northern Spur. I believe that was on the Arkansas Derby undercard. He was up close to a moderate pace in that race. I wonder if this time out he just lets the speeds go and tries to come with one run. This horse is okay, and he's got winning experience at Churchill Downs.
I like turning back to this one-turn configuration. It may have looked like he hung a little bit. He ran against Sistron in that Northern Spur. I kind of wanted him to go on with it, but if you think distance wasn't his friend, but particularly the configuration, getting back to one turn, I think that's going to do this horse a world of good. At the end of the day, he's still slow on paper. He needs to improve.
Let's go back to the Lexington Stakes at Keeneland. We're going to take a look at Nodosa. Now, Nodosa is angling to the outside right now. He was shuffled back very badly on the far turn. He was checked hard going into the first turn, and he's still running at the end. This was a promising effort from Nodosa.
Miserable trip. I mean, it really, you should go into Formulator, watch the entire replay. Going into the first turn, he got all bottled up. There was a horse that didn't turn very well. Just a really all around a poor trip for this horse. The fact that he was as close as he was at the end, I think, is a positive, particularly after he ran a couple of clunkers down at Tampa Bay. Maybe he just didn't like the surface. He has ability. I just feel like, isn't he going to take a lot of money? He's sort of the international trip horse. Everyone saw it. I think he's going to get overbet because of that.
And he's still Nodosing at the end of the day. I mean, he disappointed in his 2 prior starts. The connection said, well, maybe he didn't like the Tampa Bay track. He did run well in the Lexington. He still was overhauled by a long shot late. He is 2 for 2 in 1-turn races in his career. I think he'll give a good account of himself, but I think you make a very good point. Everybody saw that trip, and he's going to take money. Local Hero, I think this turnback's going to hit him right between the eyes. Let's go to the Louisiana Derby. Well, Local Hero was up close to a solid enough pace, and he's making a mid-move to make the front right now. But this is a long stretch at the fairgrounds against some nice horses, and Gervin's able to run him down. But I like that Local Hero, at least for the first 6 furlongs, for the first time in his career, showed a willingness to rate.
And I don't think this was a matter of him getting beat by better horses. I think it was a matter of the distance beating him. Like you say, he was very, very relaxed. He was calm. You had that rabbit go out there and hot foot in this spot. And he just kind of really switched off really nicely. I think if he's able to sort of transition over to the 1-turn mile and do that same thing, I don't think the post does him any favors with the other speeds going to be kind of coming at him. The other concern, something you brought up yesterday, and it's got to be addressed. His only win thus far came outright on the lead. Is he one of those horses that absolutely needs the lead?
Boy, I hope not. It seems that they've really been trying to teach him to rate because he was a runoff in his race 2 starts back, and he can be headstrong. I'm actually more concerned about this inside post position. What happens when he gets some dirt kicked back in his face? Is he going to get very headstrong and eager? But I'm hoping that Steve Asmussen's worked with this horse. He's really liked him. $500,000 price tag on him. By hard spun. As you say, I think cutting back is going to help. There are a couple of sharp horses stepping up in class, and Chad Brown's being a bit aggressive with the New York bred Bobby on Fleek, who scored last time out and is now stretching out to a mile.
Bobby on Fleek never took a deep breath when he came back. That was his first start off of a long layoff. Very impressive at Aqueduct most recently. And like you said, this is a pretty aggressive move for a horse by Frost Giant. He's a New York bred. He looks the part on paper. I wonder, though, of the 2 Chads, is this the one people are going to gravitate toward? He's got a big buyer speed figure, big time Form US rating. And I wonder if people are just going to think that this is the now horse for Chad.
He'll be tested for class for the first time, along with the number 9, Excitations. And Excitations look good. Last time out at Keeneland, in the early portion of that allowance race, he was part of a 4-horse scrum for the lead. Miguel Mena said, I don't want any part of that. He was able to ease this horse back, entering the turn, kind of a crucial juncture in the race. Got some dirt kicked in his face, then a hole opened up, and he shot on through. Didn't like how he was drifting out a little bit towards the end of that race, and now he has to stretch out, but he's in very capable hands with Al Stahl.
I think it was a very good effort. I liked everything about it. Like you say, really rounding the far turn, he was in behind horses, kind of got bottled up a little bit. The minute he got out, he exploded home. The little drift down the lane got to be a concern because now you're going to stretch out to the mile. I wonder, and you said it yesterday as well, maybe the distance isn't going to be his friend.
What do you do with Bitumen, who started his career off like a nice sprinter? He got some good trips in some races, especially up at Saratoga. Came back off the layoff last time out, and he didn't really fire his best shot. Can you simply make the argument, all right, he needed that race, this time he gets some pace?
I think you can. I also believe he was against the grain of the track. Again, that was on Bluegrass Saturday. Keeneland seemed to be a little bit speed-friendly. The thing that bothers me a little bit more is the equipment change. The blinkers go on for the first time before a big race. As a 2-year-old, he showed so much promise. I'm one of the people that thought he was going to be a really, really nice horse. You dive a little bit deeper. You look at those races that he ran so well at Churchill. Obviously, he likes the surface. The paces were a little bit on the slower side. I think he took advantage of that. I wonder if he's just up against it.
Any of the other long shots you're interested in here, like Rapid Dial, who's 2 for 2 lifetime, the number 3. I mean, you can't argue with an undefeated horse. Greeley and Ben, Colonel's Dark Temper. I mean, I looked at some of these horses, and I wasn't exactly thrilled.
I don't think this is a race where you're going to have just some wild result. I think you're going to have, and I say that, won't be surprised if it's a 7 or 8, 9 to 1 shot, but I think that'll be one of those where after the race, you won't look at the page and go, how did this horse possibly win? I think it's going to be pretty formful. the horses that look like outsiders, I think they are up against it.
All right, time for our top selections for the Pat Day Mile. We mentioned Chad Brown's horse, Bobby on Fleek. You like the other Chad, you're to blame. We didn't see him in the Timeform U.S. Pace Projector. What happened?
He's going to be off the page, apparently. He's going to be that far outrun, and that's kind of part of the reason I liked him. He came in the Bayshore most recently at Aqueduct. Keep in mind, that was on Wood Memorial Day. A lot of people believe speed was advantageous in that spot. He also ran into an uncoupled stablemate in Long Haul Bay, who looks like he could be anything. He's been brilliant in all 3 of his lifetime starts. This horse came with a nice belated run, long sustained bid. It looks like distance is going to be his friend, and his best stride was late. I'm hoping that the Timeform U.S. Pace Projector is accurate. I hope that the pace heats up front. Javier gets him out into the clear, and he comes down the end and runs him out.
No Gervins in here for the #1 local hero. Plus, I think he's really going to appreciate cutting back to this 1-turn mile. He's slowly learning this horse. Very eager in his first few races. Rated kindly before being asked and produced for his run at the top of the stretch in the Louisiana Derby. I'm going to take local hero from just off the pace. 1:11, 5, and 9 for me in this year's Grade 3 Pat Day Mile. Kentucky Derby, very important from a pedigree standpoint. Nicole Russo from DRF Breeding. She has got you covered. All of the pedigree and breeding angles for the Kentucky Derby. Then we go to Jonathan Kinchin for a multiple race play on the Kentucky Derby card at Churchill Downs. Let's go to those segments.
Hi guys, Nicole Russo here at Churchill Downs for Out of the Gate Kentucky Derby edition. Let's take a look at the field for the Run for the Roses this Saturday at Churchill Downs. As expected, an overflow field with Classic Empire, your morning line favorite. Now, we've talked about the pedigree of Classic Empire, McCracken, Always Dreaming, Irish War Cry, the favorites in the race extensively throughout the spring. So to try to give you a little more help here handicapping the Derby, I'm going to tell you about 2 long shots who have caught my eye training this week and who have pedigrees that I think will cause them to relish the 1.25-mile distance. One of those is State of Honor, who you watch here running 2nd in the Florida Derby last time out. Now, he came into Churchill Downs off that overshadowed by his stablemate Classic Empire at the Cassie Barn, but he's really turned my head training this week, just attacking his work so confidently, so enthusiastically. He really looks like he's thriving, ready to run the race of his life. Whether or not that's good enough to win the Kentucky Derby or not, I'll leave that to you to decide. But I don't think he'll have any vulnerabilities based on his pedigree. He's my Grade 1 winner to honor and serve. First crop for that son of Bernardini, of course from the 8 Handy line, such an important source of stamina. And State of Honor is a half-brother to a horse who's won at 1 1/8 and 1 3/16 in Japan. So he's got that bottom solid foundation on both sides of his pedigree. The other long shot I'm really taking a strong look at after this week is IRAP, who won the Bluegrass last out. You'll watch him here. Actually broke his maiden in that race. Now, I do think some of the circumstances lended themselves to that performance. He got a great trip, and really the favorite McCracken might not have been primed to run his best race that day. So, I mean, take that with a grain of salt. But that being said, I do think IRAP is coming into his own at just the right time for his connections. He's a big, strapping colt. He's really looked focused training this week, which is an important thing his connections have been trying to address with him in his day-to-day training. He's a son of 2-time Breeders' Cup Classic winner Thundersnow, already the sire of a Belmont Stakes winner, a Dubai World Cup winner, a couple of Whitney Handicap winners, a Traverse winner, a stamina in that pedigree. And on the bottom side of his page, IRAP is a half-brother to sprint champion Spitestown. So I like that he's got some speed to sharpen up the stamina that he gets from Thundersnow. Another important point, Thundersnow is a big horse who sires big horses. I don't see IRAP being intimidated in the 20-horse Derby scrum. I'll have more thoughts on the Derby contenders on DRF Live, and make sure that you follow DRF Video this weekend at DRF Video on Twitter for on-demand analysis of all the stakes at Churchill Downs this weekend.
Hey everybody, welcome to Kinchin's Corner. Yesterday, or whenever you're watching this video, I got to film this video out at Churchill Downs and decided to stay in today and get ready for the big weekend we have ahead of us with Derby and Oaks. Today we're going to talk a little bit about Derby Day. I'm going to play an ice-cold double. I gave you an ice-cold pick 3 yesterday, and hopefully that worked out. If it didn't, hopefully it put you in the right direction of of cashing some tickets with some of the opinions that I mentioned there. Today I'm going to do the same thing. Anyone who's followed our podcast or has listened to me talk, you know how much I love a horse by the name of Devisidero, and that horse is going to be running in the Woodford Reserve Turf Classic, the race right before the Kentucky Derby. He's going to be my single in that race, and look, obviously I'm a fan of the horse. But if you really want to look deep down into the PPs, I think there's some things that are interesting about this horse in this spot. One, if you look at the last 5 races Devisidero's run, he's always been on the outside. He's always lost ground in those spots. Take a look back at the tape of his last 5 races and you'll notice that. The other tricky thing about Devisidero is that he's always kind of battled the slow pace situations, and it's something I don't think he's going to run into today with a full field of quality horses. I think he'll get an inside trip down from the 2-hole for the first time in a long time. He'll save ground. He'll have pace to run into, and I think Julien Leparoux learned a lot about him riding him last time for the first time. Dove down to the inside, going a mile and a 16th. Kind of got into a tight spot. I think we'll get into a better situation here with Devisidero. And then I'm going to go right into my Kentucky Derby pick, and that's going to be the 15-horse McCracken. Ian Wilkes has been documented in the last few weeks about how he kind of points horses for this type of situation. His mentor, and he used to work for Carl Natsker, and that was something that Carl did successfully with Street Sense. And I think that a lot of people expect that to be the same thing. And if you paid attention to Mike Welsh's workout reports, you know that McCracken definitely didn't disappoint in the mornings at Churchill Downs. And I expect him to pick up the pieces regardless if it's wet or if it's dry. Dry is what I'm hoping for, knocking on wood. And because I'm going to be there, and Derby's much more fun when it's not raining. So I'm going to do a $100 cold double Devisidero to McCracken. The value in that play alone is going to be nothing like you would see at a Thursday on Aqueduct. We'll actually have to check to see what the probables will be there, but I'm excited about that opportunity. If you have an extra $20 in your pocket, I would do a $20 saver with McCracken. With Devisidero and Always Dreaming. Always Dreaming hasn't been working as well as I would like, kind of being a little bit rank in the mornings, but I still think he might be talented enough to get the job done. If you're interested in my other plays and other picks and selections and thoughts for Derby and Oaks, check out our DRF Players podcast. Myself and Pete Fornatal covered all the stakes races in the next 2 days, and hopefully we can help you find some winners there as well. Good luck. Have fun.
Welcome back to Out of the Gate. Let's move to race number 9 on the Kentucky Derby undercard. It's the Grade 2 American Turf Stakes. Let's take a peek of this field of 3-year-olds, and our American Turf Stakes preview is presented by TVG. The number 4 Oscar Performance, Mike, winner of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf last year. And a very impressive performance. What happened last time out? He didn't break very well, and he wasn't very aggressively ridden after that. Right. All in all, he had a good trip, but is he the kind of horse that at this point in his career just needs the lead to succeed?
I don't know about that. We'll find out, I guess, as time goes on, if he's a need-to-lead kind of horse. I think the kind view of the Transylvania, and certainly the way that I'm sort of looking at it is, this is a horse who needed a race off the layoff, I think, Dan. I mean, you're right, he didn't break that great in that race, but even with the poor start, they could have easily had the lead in that race if they wanted it. They didn't want it. They conceded the front to another horse. They wanted to sit in behind, and this horse got a clean run through the stretch. He just got tired at the end of the race. He stopped finding late, and he got outfinished at the end. I think he needed that race off the layoff, and I think he's going to run a lot better in this spot. Whether it's good enough to beat a field like this one, which just feels like it's loaded, is another question, but he's going to run better on Saturday.
I agree. Plenty of angles for a very classy horse in Oscar Performance. He now has a race under his belt this year. He's got Lasix, and he's run well over off turf, most notably at Belmont last year in that yielding Grade 3 Pilgrim. He just skipped over that ground. A wet turf course shouldn't pose much of a problem. Let's go back to the Transylvania and Keeneland, and let's watch this race. Oscar Performance, he's down towards the inside. The rail opens up. He just can't quicken down there. And right behind him now, splitting horses just to his outside's the eventual winner, Big Score, who's going to run down a game-long shot in Holiday Stone.
Holiday Stone ran really well and upped his game in this race, but he had all the best of it in here, loose on the lead, and he does his very best with it. He's still there at the end. He can hold on. Big Score, I think, is another horse who got a really nice trip and ride from Castellano. He kept this horse in the game, and he got clear in time, and then he finished very well to close it down. I thought both of these horses ran well, but if I'm going to take a horse out of that race, I'm not knocking those two. Either one of them I think could acquit themselves very well in this spot. I would give Oscar Performance a chance to jump it up out of that race.
Big Score was a one-run closer in Southern California, and you're right, that was a great ride by Javier to keep him in the game, as you said. There wasn't a lot of pace on, a little bit of give in the turf course. The horse fired late. It's apparent he has class, and he should get some pace to attack here. This time around, do you expect Oscar Performance to be very aggressively ridden? That could hurt Holiday Stone?
Yeah, I don't see any way Holiday Stone with the other horses in this field this time. I don't see any way that he can get to the front. Good news for him. He doesn't need the front to run his best race, but I still think this is a tough spot for him. Oscar Performance, I think he's supposed to be sharper here, and Ortiz is supposed to use his speed.
Oscar Performance, of course, won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, but let's go back to that race and keep an eye on the beaten favorite, the third-place finisher, Good Samaritan. Oscar Performance certainly got the jump on him in the stretch, but Good Samaritan's just this good-looking horse for Bill Mott. I like the way he finished here. He doesn't win it, but he's rolling late.
Yeah, he comes with a big late run in this race without any chance to catch a dominant Oscar Performance in here. This is a really good effort for Good Samaritan, though, and this comes on the heels of two really impressive runs sort of end of the summer for Bill Mott on the way into that Breeders' Cup. This is a talented horse, Dan. He's off the layoff here, and it's not an easy spot to return in, but this horse is good.
And that's the question I was going to ask you. I mean, you could tell that he's got a lot of ability. He was also a little bit green and inexperienced in some of his races. Maybe he's grown up into his body now and is ready to fulfill his potential. That could be one good thing about this layoff, but the bad thing is he's spotting recency to some of these other horses. Does it simply come down to price in this situation?
Always happy to sort of take a little bit of a negative stance on a horse who's going to be a short price off of a layoff, and that feels like it's the case with Good Samaritan. That being said, I think he's probably going to turn out to be one of the better horses in this crop on turf anyway, and there's just no way for me anyway to play this late bit for and not use this horse.
Horse with some dirtied up form is the number 9, Made You Look, who started off his season with a graded stakes victory in the Dania Beach at Gulfstream Park. He then went off the odds-on favorite in the Kitten's Joy Stakes, and let's just watch this. First of all, there is absolutely no pace. Second of all, he is way in behind horses, mired in traffic at a key juncture. I think you have to give this horse a lot of credit that he rolls late.
Yeah, he runs really, really well in this race. He just couldn't get out to the clear when it mattered. Now he's clear, but it's just there's just too much ground for him to make up. He puts in a great late run here to get up for third. I thought this was a good performance. His return off the layoff at Dania Beach, he hammered that field. This horse is pretty good, and he's more tactical than that, Dan. He can get a better trip than the one that he got last time. He's a player in here at what should be a pretty square price.
So he won the Dania Beach. He was arguably best in the Kitten's Joy, and because he was training so well on the dirt, Todd decided to run him in the Fountain of Youth, and he's not a dirt horse. All that does is dirty up his line, and maybe his price will improve. He should get some pace. I think he's a talented horse. Maybe he gets lost in the shuffle a little bit.
I agree with that. I think you might get him at a square number in this race, and I'm going to use him a little bit. I think he's okay.
The horse that beat him in the Kitten's Joy, Kitten's Cat, had all the best of it. He was up close to that glacial pace. He was game and winning. He is a rock-solid horse. I've always thought that a mile is his absolute limit. He's now going to stretch out to a mile and a 16th, and the pace won't be as kind as in that spot.
Yeah, I think all those things are true, Dan. I mean, he's a pretty nice horse. I do not like him in this race.
From Southern California comes Conquest Fahrenheit, who is no match for Good Samaritan up at Woodbine last year, but it appears that these new connections, they bought him during the Conquest Dispersal last November at Keeneland, have gotten him figured out. Let's watch his most recent performance in the Pasadena Stakes, where he basically controlled this race from start to finish. I don't like how he gets a little bit drifty in the lane, but he finishes it off well enough, and he's run some fast races.
Yeah, he has run some fast races. His last two races out there when they got him back to turf, they're both pretty good. I'll be honest, when I looked at this race on paper, I thought I was going to like it a lot more than when I watched it. Not that he was ever in any danger of losing this race, but I really felt like he was going to win that race, just like run off from that field, and he didn't really do it through the stretch. The other problem I had with him a little bit in this race is, again, I think Oscar Performance is going to be a lot sharper in this race. I think he's going to be up there on the pace with this horse, so there's not going to be any easy lead for this horse this time.
So you will disagree with this time form S Pace Projector, which is coming up right now, and that has Conquest Fahrenheit up front. I agree with you. I think the goal here from Oscar Performance, I think the connections are going to say, I'm on the best horse, and I'm not fooling around. I'm going to the front. And with Conquest Fahrenheit to his outside, I think Conquest Fahrenheit's connections might have a little bit concerns about this distance as well. they'll be chasing Oscar Performance, and that could be a tough trip for Conquest Fahrenheit.
Yeah, it'll be a lot different for him, that's for sure. This is a tough spot for this horse, but they're shipping him over here off of 2 good races with some confidence.
How good is La Coronel? Mark Casse thinks she's pretty good because he's bypassing a spot where she'd be a big favorite at Churchill Downs on Friday to run against the boys here. Now, she doesn't get the best of it from a post position outcome, tough outside post, but let's watch her most recent race in the Appalachian. She got a beautiful trip, and she just pounded these horses in the stretch.
Yeah, she won this race a lot easier. I mean, I'm not surprised that she won. I'm surprised that she won it as easily as she did because I thought this was a good field on the way in. I mean, she's just way better than these horses, sprinting clear the last 16th of a mile or so. Nice performance for her. This spot, obviously way tougher for her. She didn't get a great post position either. I mean, will I fall off my chair if she wins this race, Dan? I won't fall off my chair, but I don't like her that much in here. We'll see what happens.
Brad Cox wasn't afraid to test the number 6 Arklow on dirt. As a maiden, he ran this horse in the Lecomte, and the horse was far from embarrassed, but it's possible that turf is what this horse has been waiting for all along, because in his turf debut, he produced a really solid performance, but he got a nice pace setup as well.
He got a nice trip, and he got a nice setup, you're right, but he also really ran through the stretch. It was a big step forward for what he'd been doing on the main track. We'll see if he can keep it going. Again, this is a horse who's found a pretty tough field here to make a stakes debut.
We talk about Made You Look having some dirty form. Your top selection in this race has some dirty form as well. Ridden the wrong way on a surface that he doesn't like. Tell us about the big-priced Parlor.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what this horse can do because, again, he's finding a pretty tough field here. Yeah, you're right about the way they rode him last time, but I just don't think that was the right race to run him. And I don't know what they were doing in the spiral with this horse. He is a turf horse. All 3 of his turf starts really good. The figures aren't there yet, but I don't think that really matters. He had 0 pace in front of him in his seasonal debut at Tampa, but he flew through the stretch. It did not matter. He was really unlucky when he didn't win at Kentucky Downs in his 2nd career start. I think this horse has a lot of ability, Dan. I think he's got a lot of upside. I think he fits this race pretty well, and you're going to get him at a price if you're right on Saturday.
I'm going to take a shot with the 7 Conquest Fahrenheit, 5-1 on the morning line, and I'm hoping that a wet turf course is the great equalizer for Conquest Fahrenheit because he's run a couple of times now on off turf, and he's performed well each and every time. This is a confident placement, shipping across the country. I hope he doesn't get involved in a speed duel with a horse like Oscar Performance. Even the horse down on the rail, Holiday Stone, has a lot of speed. I'd love for him to be able to sit and finish, but I thought his last race was solid. He's run some fast races. Most importantly, has run well on off turf. In the American turf, I am going to go with 7, 1,
give me the numbers.
4, and 10. It's a good race to be sure. Lots more stakes action coming up in a minute. Race number 10 at Churchill Downs is at 7 furlongs. It's the Grade 2 Churchill Downs Stakes for some very fleet sprinters. Let's take a look at this field. The number 2 Masochistic is the 5-2 morning line favorite, based in Southern California. He's 7 years old. He's got some aches and pains, but when he's right, he's very, very fast, and he's won over this track in the past.
He's very talented. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. He has talent, but, and it's a big but, he's not the hardiest horse. You throw a stick in his path, he's going to say, I don't want to do this anymore. Which is why there's another horse in this race that I think is the key to the race. We'll dive into that in a little bit. But Masochistic, if he's feeling good and he wants to go out there and he gets the lead all to himself, he can make this field pay.
He is certainly the speed nearest the rail, but last time out he was upset by Denman's Call, who follows Masochistic across the country to Churchill Downs. Let's go back to that Triple Bend Stakes at Santa Anita on March the 11th. Masochistic was on the lead. Masochistic got off the rail. Denman's Call with a very beautiful ride, shot on through, and now it's all about guts and determination.
And you know when it comes down to that, no disrespect, Masochistic ain't going to win that battle. Denman's Call goes on with it. Like you say, very, very good ride from Tyler Bays. Again, you can go into Formulator and look at the entirety of the replay. Going into the far turn, he got him into a good spot. Masochistic popped back to his left lead. That's been something he's all of a sudden been doing. You brought up the aches and pains. You wonder, this is the old boy. Maybe he's not as hardy as he once was physically, let alone, we're not going to deal with actually the heart that he's got. But Denman's Call, I think, is a major, major player in here.
In the case of Denman's Call, was last time the time to have him at 16-1? Or are you willing to say these connections have always liked Denman's Call? They tested him early in his career, and now he's still lightly raced, but he's getting a little bit older. He's more mature. Maybe he's coming into himself and ready to become a top-flight sprinter.
He's one of 2 in here that I want, and I only want 2 in here. I think Denman's Call has a giant, giant chance in here. The other good thing is a lot of the connections in Southern California are content staying in Southern California. When they ship out, sometimes it's with mixed results. Doug O'Neill knows how to ship out of town, whether it's Kentucky, New York, Florida, you name it. He knows how to win on big stages. I think this horse is ready to go, and I think he's going to fire a big shot Saturday.
You mentioned that pace is key, especially for Masochistic, and especially for a horse like Denman's Call, who might get outrun in the early portion of this race. Let's see what the Timeform U.S. Pace Projector has in store for this year's Churchill Downs Stakes. Not surprisingly, they have the number 2, Masochistic, out there and on the lead, but perhaps key, the number 14 Bluegrass Singer, he's out there with him.
Bluegrass Singer, to me, is the key to the entire race, because if he doesn't try to go and clear off from the outside post, which I have to be honest, I don't think there is any choice. I think Luis Saez has to go and try to make the front. If they don't, and Masochistic is allowed to walk on the front end, this is a horse that can make you pay, even if he may not be what he was 2 or 3 years ago.
The horse sitting in third on your pace projector is the number 9, Limousine Liberal. And Limousine Liberal is coming out of the Commonwealth Stakes at Keeneland most recently, a race that was won by Awesome Slew. Let's watch the stretch run of the Commonwealth. You liked Awesome Slew in this race, and this is what's known as widest and fastest.
I thought he was really, really impressive here, particularly when you consider the main track at Keeneland that day. I know some people think outside was the place to be. I'm not going to argue with that, but speed certainly was advantageous. He came way, way out of it, put in this big, long bid. The concern is what you're about to see right here almost. He's going to pop back to his left lead. I don't like that one bit. I think last time was the time, and I know it sounds silly because he was only 3-1, and you may actually get something comparable to that in here. I didn't love the way that he popped back to his left lead.
What do you think about this inside post for Awesome Slew, a horse that pretty much now the connections have realized he is a one-run late sprinter? I mean, he's probably going to be last early and he's going to have to go around everybody or weave his way through.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what kind of trip he gets. I think Rosario is going to try to do something similar to what he did in Commonwealth. You've got the Masochistic drawn just to the outside. You've got Chivarelli one path out from there in post 3. I think those two are just going to go. I don't think he's going to have to worry about having horses come over on him. I don't think he has the kind of early gas to run with those.
Can you make the case that Limousine Liberal is primed now? The Commonwealth was his first start of the year. He was up and on a contested pace, and all things considered, he ran really well to be third. With the trip we saw from the Timeform U.S. Pace Projector, sitting third off what could be a little bit of a speed duel between Masochistic and Bluegrass Singer, maybe he's ready to improve. My concern's the 7. I think he's a little bit better at 6.
I think he's better at 6, 6.5. I also just look at him now and say, you're never going to live up to what I thought you were going to be. Very early on, he ran so well in the King's Bishop in only his 3rd lifetime start. I thought he was going to be a legitimate sort of grade 1, grade 2 caliber sprinter, and he just hasn't materialized and developed into that. He should work out a good trip in here. He's just a horse that I don't love.
Matt, tell us about the number 5, Clearly Now. It was nice to see the old man get back on the winning track last time out in a very fast race at Gulfstream Park. At least it was fast from a buyer standpoint.
Yeah, from a buyer standpoint, highest last out buyer in the field with a 104. The Timeform US rating a little bit on the lighter side, a 117. That's not fast enough, I don't think, to win in a spot like this. The other thing to keep in mind, boy, he got a beautiful trip down at Gulfstream Park, and the other thing is, that track was unbelievably fast. He finished 7/8 and 120 flat. He hasn't done that in a long, long time. You and I loved this horse. He's always been sort of an ouchie type. Maybe he can turn the clock back and fire one more big one. I'm going to play against it.
I need to see him do it again at his advanced stage. And again, you know, didn't change leads in the stretch. You always wonder if he's a little bit ouchy. There are some long shots in this race before we get to your top selection with some credentials. The number 3, Chivarelli, added blinkers last time out. They dropped him in for 62.5, and he responded with a nice victory opening weekend at Keeneland, where he kind of bucked the trend a little bit. You had to be either on or near the lead, and he was slightly off of it.
I've always liked Chivarelli. I think the addition of the blinkers went a long way. I'm surprised nobody actually dipped in and took him for 62.5. I think he's an interesting horse. I don't think he's quite this good.
Apprehenders banked almost $600,000 in his career, and he ran second to a very good sprinter in Whitmore at Oaklawn last time out. This horse needs a fast pace to succeed. Do you think he's just a cut below the truly top sprinters in this race?
I do. I think he's a cut below, and I also don't know that he's going to get sort of the barbecue up front that he needs.
Solid Wager should really appreciate this 7 furlong distance. He is a true closing sprinter, and if you think those tracks in Southern California work against him, maybe getting out of there will help. He's also run well on a wet track.
I think that's the key. If this is still a sort of drying out surface Saturday afternoon, or if the rains continue, This horse has proven on a wet track, actually one of his best races of his career, the Dead Heat in the graded stake race, came on a wet track. So this is an interesting horse.
I'm interested in your thoughts on a long shot with a lot of angles in his corner. The number 6, Forever Mo's, 30-1 on the morning line. He was second in the Pat Day Mile at Churchill Downs last year. He's turning back in distance, adding blinkers, and has always acted like a late-running one-turn horse.
He really has. This seems like this is what he wants to do, sort of be that closing sprinter. My problem is, where is his fast race on his page? Maybe the blinker's going on. Maybe that changes him a little bit. I just have a hard time buying this horse.
Another closing sprinter is the Truth or Else, who came from way out of it to win the Sir Shackleton on April Fool's Day at Gulfstream Park, a race that was much slower than Clearly Now 7 furlongs that same afternoon.
And you want to talk about a setup. They went unbelievably fast early on. Bluegrass Singer was part of that early pace. It completely disintegrated. Truth or Else from the far outside just absolutely swept by everyone. If he gets a giant pace, he's a major player.
Another late-running sprinter in this race is the 13 Tom's Ready. We haven't seen him since the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. Give him a pace, he's going to rally. But it seems every horse we've talked about recently is a late-running sprinter. Is he going to get enough pace? He's a nice horse.
I don't know if he's going to get enough pace, but I feel like he could fall through the cracks. This might be the best of all the closers that no one is talking about or no one is remembering. Dallas Stewart knows a thing or two about winning races on big days at big prices. If this horse gets a little bit of pace, don't be surprised if he upsets the apple cart.
Pick time for the Churchill Downs Stakes. We talked about this race last night. You said, I'm crazy. I'm picking this horse.
Yeah.
After I watched this horse's last race, you're not that crazy.
I have never, ever liked El Kabir, but this is the time. I think Bill Mott may have finally figured out what this horse wants. It's going to be the second start from Mott. The most recent start, I understand he got a good pace in front of him to run at. But if you look at the Timeform US color codings talking about how fast or how the track was playing, whether it was favoring speed or favoring horses from off the pace, it was intensely speed friendly that day. This horse overcomes this, runs a good second, only about 3/4 of a length beaten. I think second off the bench. I know he's been gone for about 31 to 60 days, but I think he's going to sit on a big, big race. You get Javier for Bill Mott. I'm going to be stunned if he's 6-1 like he is on the morning line. I think he's going to drift up from there. I just think El Kabir, again, I never ever thought I would say this. I think El Kabir is sitting on a big, big race. And the other good news for him, if you like him, like I do, if the track is still wet, he loves a wet track. He's due for a lifetime.
Our Churchill Downs Stakes coverage, of course, presented by TVG. This is a very interesting race. I'm going to stick with Denman's call. I'm going to go with Loyalty here. I think he's on the cusp of becoming a top-flight sprinter, at least at 7 furlongs. And he showed in his most recent race that he is somewhat adaptable to the pace. He was hustled out of there by Tyler Bays because he didn't want Masochistic to get too far away. So at least he's not just a true one-run closer. He can be a tracker or stalker, and maybe he needs to adopt that style if there's not a lot of pace in this race. But he's so lightly raced, I even think there's still upside potential even after his last race, his career-defining performance in the Triple Bend. I'm going to go 12, 5, 1, and 2 in the Grade 2 Churchill Downs Stakes. Lots of stakes previews still to come here on Out of the Gate. Race number 11 at Churchill Downs on Kentucky Derby Saturday is the Grade 1 Woodford Reserve Turf Classic at 1 1/8 miles. Let's take a look at this field. It's a good, solid group, and our Turf Classic Stakes preview is presented by William Hill. Mike, the number 2, Divisadero, won this race last year. He is a true Churchill Downs horse for course. We know when he's right. He's fast, he's talented. Would you take him as the favorite in this spot?
Yeah, I don't think I would take him as the favorite. I mean, obviously, you know from Divisadero's previous races that he could easily win this race. I just, you know, we've seen him 3 times now in 2017, and I don't think we've seen the good Divisadero in any one of those 3 races. So he's in a position now where he has to show that he's still the horse that he once was, and I don't know if I'd be taking a short price on that proposition.
And I agree with you, because this is a very competitive field. I really don't want to take him at a short price. He always seems to get bet in these races, and I'm not sure where his current edge is. If he can find what he used to be, boy, he'll be really tough in this spot. Let's go to the Gulfstream Park Turf Handicap earlier this year. Beach Patrol, and this is what he is. Just a game-tough horse. He fought all the way, and he dropped a tough decision.
This horse is just tough as nails, Dan. I mean, he was on the lead the entire way here. He just couldn't shake free from the stretch, but as they come for him, he does not want to let this thing go. I mean, he just stays on dead game all the way to the finish. He gives War Correspondent a good bump there at the end of the race, and he gets disqualified from second, but this was a good performance for a horse. I mean, he knows no other way, Dan. He shows up and he runs his eyeballs out every time.
And let's take a look at the Timeform Timeform U.S. Pace Projector for this race. We saw Beach Patrol go to the front in the Gulfstream Turf Handicap. He really seemed very comfortable there, and it looks like he's going to be forward once again under Florent Giroux.
I mean, there's just not a ton of pace in this race, so I don't see any reason why they wouldn't try and use his speed to their advantage and get to the front in this race. You know, we'll see if anybody goes with him and puts some pressure on him. The thing with Beach Patrol is if somebody else wants to lead, this horse doesn't need the lead, Dan. He's perfectly happy to sit up close and track the pace as well.
Flatlined upset the field in the Grade 2 Fort Lauderdale handicap. He's come back with some disappointing performances, one of them in the Gulfstream Park Turf. Is he just too off form to consider even at a big price?
I mean, he's got it in him to run a race that would make him competitive here, but I don't like his recent form, and I just sort of feel like even with that big win on his page, I never really felt like he was this kind of horse.
A horse that might be close to Beach Patrol in the early portion of this race, according to the Timeform U.S. Pace Projector, is Conquest Panthera, most recently giving a good account of himself in the Makers 46 mile. Mike, let's take this field home, because not only did Conquest Panthera ran well, but so did Bala Rocks.
Yeah, I think they both did. I actually thought Bala Rocks maybe ran the better race of the two. Not to take anything away from Conquest Panthera, he came 4 wide through that second turn, and he races on here. He isn't quite good enough. I guess my real problem, Dan, is I don't love this race overall. I thought Bala Rocks did really well in this race. He's the 10 there, closing down the outside at the end of the race. I liked his performance. I just don't like that race overall.
From a win standpoint, I agree with you. I'd rather have Bala Rocks. It seems like he's really taken a step forward with the addition of blinkers. It does seem that Conquest Panthera is over the myriad physical issues that have plagued him through his career, and he's in very good form with Mark Casse. Like you, I'm taking mostly a negative stance against the horses coming out of the Makers 46. Bal Abali came off of a little bit of a layoff last time out in the Frankie Kilroe Mile, and boy did he get a wonderful trip and ride by Javier Castellano. But it must be noted that the favorite in that race, Dortmund, did not fire at all.
Right, Dortmund didn't fire at all. We didn't get Bolo's best race in that spot either. I don't know what to say about Bala Abali. I mean, I think he's obviously a contender in this race, but this is just another case like we just sort of alluded to with the Makers 46. I don't like the Kilroe Mile as a race overall. I do not want horses out of that race.
Divisadero won this race last year. World Approval finished second. World Approval danced a lot of dances at distances that might have been a little bit too far for him, but he came back to the races most recently at Tampa Bay Downs in real nice confidence-boosting performance. I know you like this horse at this distance, and he's very adaptable from a pace standpoint.
Yeah, he really is. He can get any kind of trip in the race. They didn't have him up close necessarily in that pace projector we looked at before, but this horse can be close to the pace, and I expect him to be close to the pace on Saturday as well. I know that he got his grade 1 at 11 furlongs last year, but I really don't think that's his best game. I feel like this is sort of a 9 or 10 furlong horse at his very best. This is a great distance for him. He's second off the layoff after a really nice prep race down at Tampa. I mean, that was a race he was never going to lose, but he won it really, really easily, and he never took a deep breath doing it. This is a good spot for this horse.
Can't Help Believing ran some very fast races last summer for trainer Graham Motion before going to the shelf. This is a very confident placing for the first start off an extremely long layoff by a very shrewd trainer in Motion. But is it a little bit too much too soon, and this is a horse that we could follow over the summer?
Yeah, maybe. And he is a horse who does want to go long, but I don't know if this distance is necessarily too short for him either. It's not an easy spot to return in. I know you and I both have a little bit of a thing for this horse, Dan. I'm going to have a hard time. If he's one of the bigger prices in this race, I'm going to have a hard time leaving him out.
Several horses coming out of the Muniz Memorial down at the fairgrounds. Let's start with Oscar Nominated, who's a very consistent horse. He just needs to seem to run a bit better to win at the grade 1 level.
Yeah, the real problem with him, that's all true. And the real problem with all those races where he runs well and doesn't win is there are no excuses for him in those races. I mean, he gets really good trips, and at the end of the day, he just cannot get it done.
Kasaki seemed to be traveling very well in this race last year as a big price, and then he clipped heels and went down.
Right.
This is going to be his third start of the form cycle, but are you starting to get a little bit weary of Kasaki's act? There are a lot of second-place finishes on his resume, and it looked like he had a big chance in mid-stretch last time out and just couldn't seal the deal.
I was surprised he didn't get it done last time. It felt like maybe he hung a little bit. I don't want to take anything away from Enterprise, who's in really good form and held him off there, but it felt like this horse hung. You go to that race at Tampa Bay 2 starts back, he ran well with a good trip, but he was only second best. You go back to the Arlington Million last year, he ran well with a good trip. He was only second best. When is this horse going to get it done?
It's a big question mark for Kasaki, who's solid, but lots of second place efforts. I want your quick thoughts on Enterprising, a horse that's capable of getting good trips.
Yeah.
Michael Maker's done a really good job for him. He was always a solid enough horse for Tommy Proctor, but Maker seems to have figured him out. He runs hard every time, but do you think the competition he was facing down at the fairgrounds was a little bit suspect?
I did think that this was going to be tough for him. I mean, I don't want to say that it was suspect for fields that he was beaten at the fairgrounds, but I think this is going to be tougher for him. I like him as a horse, and I like his tactical running style. I just think this is a tougher spot.
We're both going to look for a couple of prices in this race. It's pick time for the Turf Classic. Mike, where are you going to go?
Yeah, I'm going to take World Approval in this race. I did like that return from the layoff. He ran well in this race last year. I think this is the perfect race for them to step up second off the layoff and get a good trip and run a good race here.
Discount Michael Maker at your own peril in these sort of situations. Enterprising has the tactical speed to get a good trip. He is very consistent. He's just not as sexy as some of these horses with their triple-digit Beyer speed figures, but I wonder if a good trip will lead to yet another good performance. Best of all, at a good price for the number 9, Enterprising. 9, 4, 6, 11 for me in the Woodford Reserve Turf Classic, race number 11 at Churchill Downs. We thank you so much for watching this week's edition of Out of the Gate, both the Oaks and the Kentucky Derby editions. We'll see you next week on DRF.com at video.drf.com. We'll have all of the recap, all of the analysis, many of these major stakes races from Churchill Downs. Best of luck when your horses break out of the gate in the Kentucky Derby.